Hey fellow heathens, it's Liz, and I'm back with a deck review called Wisdom of the Shadow. This is an oracle deck that explores various parts of our shadow selves, those deep parts of ourselves that need extra healing, extra attention, and extra love to assimilate and allow these energies to become part of ourselves as far as the healing process is concerned. So this deck is by Hahn, she's the artist, and Jessica Ricchetti. She is the author of the Guidebook, and she curated Jenny's collection to create this amazing oracle deck. Now this deck is very special to me because I reached out to Jessica and Jenny, mainly Jessica I had been working with, but I reached out to Jessica because I was so taken by this project that I really wanted to be a part of it. And since I have a lot of background in editing, I have authored several articles of my own, I reached out and I said, if you need any help with, just making sure that the proofing has gone right with the guidebook, I'd be more than happy to lend a hand. And I was really excited that they took me up on that offer, and I was able to, kind of be a part of the process as far as taking a look at the guidebook and just making sure that, I's were dotted and T's were crossed and stuff like that. So here is the guidebook, and this is a Kickstarter edition. I got this beautiful postcard, and on the back it says, Elizabeth, deepest gratitude to you for all of your support, time, edits, and backing. So many changes happened after your edits. I am excited to be sharing the final work with you. May this oracle offer a deep window into new layers of you. XO, love, Jessica. And down below, you'll see that there's ways that you can learn more about this deck on Instagram and Facebook. So if you just take a look, you'll see what the hashtag is and where you can find more information. And I'll also obviously be linking information about this deck in the description box. So what also came with this deck is this beautiful bag. And this was one of Jenny's art pieces. So I'll be able to put the deck, and it's lined. It's just this really beautiful, like faux leather bag. I love it so much. And I love this image. It really takes you to the center. So here's the deck. And I also wanted to mention that in exchange for my efforts in the proofing process, I did receive this deck gifted to me. So all that aside, I knew this was a deck that I wanted in my collection, regardless of what happened with the process. I was going to back this anyway, because I think it's a very special deck, and as we get into it, I'll explain why. So here's this hard box. It's beautiful. Let's read this part here. Hidden in plain sight is the wisdom we seek most deeply. This 44-card deck book set invites you on an inner journey to explore and integrate the shadowy layers of yourself in order to find greater awareness, self-acceptance, clarity, inner peace, and wholeness. So it is published by Intuitive Art and Alchemy, and here's the website that you can see. So let's get right into it. So it's got a magnetic closure, which is awesome. That's my favorite. That is available, like tuck boxes and 2-piece boxes. I love the hard case magnetic closures the best. And inside it says, welcome, wise one. Within you lies a gold mine of truth, ready to be discovered and integrated. With an open mind and a courageous heart, it is time to enter the mystery of the shadow, to uncover the wisdom waiting to be revealed. So I'm going to pull out the cards, and it came with this beautiful ribbon here that helps you pull the cards out. Here are the cards, and I will show them to you in just a second. I wanted to get into the guidebook a little bit. Now, this is a very special guidebook, and it talks a lot about what the shadow is, and it gives a little bit of a background on how the project came about, how the creators met. I'm going to push this aside a little bit. How they met and how they started working together towards the culmination of this project. And Here's the introduction about emotional growth. Now, I love that Jessica makes sure that people understand that there's no right or wrong way to engage with this oracle, and she mentions that several times throughout the guidebook. It really is about the sensory understanding of what these images bring up, and it is about feeling into what's happening inside the body so that you can understand the emotions and the thoughts that are involved with these specific shadow energies. So how you explore the shadow, and she's just very kind and calm. She has her approach to this guidebook was very like, be easy with yourself. And I really appreciated that very much. And because this is not easy work to do. Working with the shadow can oftentimes be very difficult because we repress a lot of these energies because of their difficulty and our tendency to kind of relieve the pain that sometimes these shadow energies bring up for us, and we just distract ourselves, and we just generally, it's uncomfortable to experience these feelings. However, in working with the shadow, we understand that the underlying triggers that we often experience in our day-to-day lives comes up less and less once we understand what it is that is triggering us, and that is the whole point of this work. So there's lots of ideas in working with the oracle. You can pull one card, you can just read into the guidebook, you can do the spreads that are included. There's lots of rituals too, and we're going to get into that a little bit as well. So each card you can do something like active, and I love that as well. You can do something that not just thinking about the energies, you actually physically and mentally and emotionally really get into the deeper work of letting this healing process happen. So there's lots of ways to amplify your rituals, and there's some spreads, which is awesome. I love when guidebooks include that. And then it gets into the cards with their core essences. So if we look at how the guidebook is laid out, you have a little thumbnail of the card. You have the keyword that's on the card itself, the name of the art, and a quote. And this is like almost like a mantra that you can use to say to yourself while you're working with this energy. Here's some other, there's lots of keywords in this space here, like water and earth, fire and air. And then it talks a little bit about the energy itself. Here's some questions to ask oneself. These are great journaling prompts. And here's the ritual. So each card has 2 pages in this same layout. Okay, it doesn't really talk about the image itself as far as its symbolism, and I think that that's intentional because it allows you to intuitively pick up on signals that the card imagery is sending you. So we're going to take a look at the guidebook in more detail a little bit later. So the cardstock is a matte finish, so you can see it's got just barely a sheen to it, but for the most part it's matte. The size is oracle size, so this is a standard tarot card size from Morgan Greer. So you can see how much bigger it is, and we'll take a look at the awesome, beautiful, look at that, brown gilding. It's amazing. And here are the beautiful backs, as you can, as I showed you on that bag. And look at just like how awesome that is when you fan it out, right? It's just awesome. So again, this is a 44 card deck, and it gives you a lot to really chew on. And when I was first going through the deck, there were cards that came up for me, like I had a visceral reaction to some of these cards, and other cards it was more of a smoother interaction with these cards, and some of them really hit me. And I noticed and I notated which cards did that for me, And I really understand why that's important. So a lot of times when we get like decks of cards, and there are certain cards that hit us in different ways, sometimes we just kind of push it away. And that's the whole point of this oracle, is to pay attention to the things that have more of that like punch, that raw visceral hit, and ask yourself why. So you can sit with this, with the cards, and see what comes up for you. And that's what we're going to do today. So here's the card Authenticity. Now, if we look at the card, you can see obviously there's a figure with horns and a mask and claws. Just the image of like a white mask on this like monster, wow, it really says so much, because here it says on the forehead, I'm fine. Well, obviously, no, we're not. And the whole point of authenticity is to understand what masks do we put on in different relationships, in different scenarios, different situations, that we hide our true selves. So here's like, there's a lot of mouths in this deck as well. So we have these like tears that have an open, like crying mouth and a sad face. And it says, I am here for you always. Don't go. I will always be here with you. I love you. And then it's just like, do not fucking leave. Like, there's swears in this. So here's a disclaimer right now. If that bothers you, then it may be something that you have to consider. So when we give ourselves to others, sometimes there are strings attached, and we want things that satisfy that sense of insecurity in us as well. So when we think about authenticity, it's about understanding who we truly are deep inside, and what we say and do to others to keep them in our lives. And you can think of, I'm sure, several examples in your life that bring up certain triggers in your interactions with other people. So the next one is balance. Now this one is of the tree pose in yoga, and all of the different colors come together, and there is a balance like on each side of the card, as you can see. So balance figuratively and in life. So you see this glowing center at the heart, and I think that that's where we need to come to an understanding that our balance is not just in one part of our lives, whether it be the head or the heart. It's kind of like following the guidance of the heart, but staying in balance as you manifest what comes of your listening to the heart in your actual life. Boundaries. This card was a tough one for me, because I I do get that. It's like sometimes we just want to be left alone, and everything inside of you is just saying, just stop, just leave me alone, let me be here. As you can see, this figure is sitting in the lotus position. Just leave me alone, just go away. And there's like this certain like rage that can come up from within when people continually invade your boundaries, invade your privacy, and don't listen to you when you tell them that you need space, right? And I feel like many of us can understand that element. Or if it's something where you never want space, and maybe if you're the one who's always like, who's never retreating to like their inner cave, and who may be the one who is trying to always draw out from someone who does retreat to their inner cave, it's like, which side of this energy are you on? Are you the one whose boundaries are being invaded, or are you the one who's invading the boundaries? And it's a really, really potent and important element to consider. So you see all these layers, right? So this is just me like kind of intuitively coming up with things. It's like, how many layers to get down to the real reason why this individual does not want to interact right now. Change. Now you can see all the levels here. You have these squiggly lines here, and you have this blackness. So there's like a void here, and then it kind of begins again, and then you end up in this circle of light. So it's like, I feel like there's a wave that's coming up and over some obstacle, and the goal here is to achieve some kind of understanding or some kind of awareness or clarity as to what the problem is. Confusion. Now you have two separate things happening that's divided by this almost water-like substance. And if you look at it, it's like, are these two faces, or, what exactly is happening here? Are these rock formations? Is this almost like a heart? And I think that's the whole point, is that this is a confusing image, and you have to just sit with it and let the confusion speak to you. Let the cards speak to you, but it really represents the shadow feeling of confusion. So when we don't understand what's happening to us or what's happening within us, just letting the disparate parts of ourselves speak, and just and sitting with it, and being okay with not understanding right now, because the answers will come. Connection. Now you see two figures. They kind of have two different colorations here, but they have the same background, and they're joined here at the center. So you have two that come together as one. And how the idea of connection, how does it make you feel? Human relationships are complicated, and they're very dynamic. Oftentimes there are conditional elements to our love, and the goal ultimately is unconditional love, but we have so many barriers to loving unconditional because of our ego. So when we unite with someone, we have almost like a romanticized idea of what it's going to be like together, and then as the two become one, they ultimately show the truth, which is that we are all individuals. How can we come together and unite and yet remain an individual in the process and not lose our individuality? Courage. Now, as you can see here, there's a figure in a boat going towards an unknown element here in the corner of the card. We have these kind of scary figures coming out in the sidelines here, but we have almost like a barrier. We have a guided way, like the lights on the runway of that a plane would need to guide them to where they need to land. So you have this person, and I don't know why the shape of this boat makes me feel like it's like a mouth as well. So we have to put ourselves in uncomfortable circumstances and trust that it will lead us to better things. Dependency. So like I said, there's lots of mouths here, and when you look at these images, again, some of them trigger things within you, and that's the whole point. So when we're dependent on someone else, you have this like fire-like energy coming from the head, and you also have this fire-like energy coming from the heart. Which one is really in charge here? When are we the one who's dependent on another, or someone else dependent on us? How much are we giving? What are we saying to the other person and to ourselves that speak our truth? Discomfort. So this could be one person. If you look at these like spirals here, these could be eyes. The discomfort of going through the shadow. But you also have this person's hand here letting you know that you're safe and that you're okay. When things don't feel quite right, how do we deal with it? Since this is not a human being, the discomfort itself is something that I think we project it onto other people, and we make it into like a human form. Like we look at what's inside of us and we see it in others, but we can't always detect it within ourselves. And then just to know that it's going to be okay, that we can sit with this discomfort and we don't have to run away from it. Dissolution. As we can see, there's like a whirlpool here, and there's a figure here, it almost feels like, and these fish are just following along. And what's happening when we dissolve something? Two entities, there's a water and another substance, and they meld, and the water just takes over that substance and it becomes something else. So you could consider like these fish as being like salt particles, for instance, and then as you dissolve, it becomes another substance, which is salt water. And you know, all of the benefit that salt water has on our bodies, like just salt by itself or just water by itself doesn't necessarily create that healing. So when you pull these two things together, that's when you can create that healing energy in the center. Doubt. This woman, to me, looks like she's underwater, but she's got her hands in a position that's like, I don't know, unsure. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty here, and although this person is trying to speak, it's almost inaudible because she's underwater. So when you don't have a way, like the Two of Swords in tarot, you're not sure which way to go. You're almost stuck in that position of indecision. So as we consider this card, we consider the two paths that we might take. And we have to sit with that until one of them comes forward and shows itself to be the right path to follow. Emotion. So there's, again, lots going on in this card. You have the tears down here, and you have the closed eyes and the nose. This could be another figure here looming over, or this could be the main figure and the emotion is inside. And then how do we spread that emotion out? Do we react to what's happening inside and then just let it go, or do we respond after the emotion has had a chance to be processed by the brain? So lots to consider in this card. You know, you could say this is sadness, passion, love, everything is in this card. Emptiness. And again, a person sitting in the lotus position, but there's a hole. But behind, if you look at the colors used, you get a sense of where the darkness is and where the light is. So the light is behind the individual. So maybe if they had just turned around, they could see that everything is not so bad. And it feels very weighted. So you have the darker colors down here, and it kind of lightens up into this red color up here. How do we fill that hole? Is it even necessary that we should feel the need to fill it when the hole itself is the element of change happening? So it's for our greater good is what I'm kind of getting from this image. And you know, we have to be careful how we try to fill these holes within ourselves, and to make sure that we're not just relying on the ego and the mind and the easiest route possible, but we take our time and we understand what caused the emptiness in the first place. Expectations. Now this is another one. There's so much that you could sit with these cards for hours or days or weeks, because there's so much to unpack here. You could sit here and you could read everything. That's silly. You're working her to death. Not good enough. Work harder. You know, my dear, you are loved. So some of the wording is cut off, but you get the main gist of it. It almost feels like these are kettlebells or some kind of weights, and it says fear, and it's like dripping down. So all of the expectations that society, that our families, that we put on ourselves, all of that creates, it could be a stimulus for greater progress and greater change and evolvement as a human, leading to more success, but it can also stop us in our tracks and hold us down. So you hear, you know, it's like this is a loving hand here, but some of the stuff that's holding this person down, it's almost like puncturing the person and holding them in place. So it's really important that we take a look at what do we tell ourselves as true that we must do every day. Are there certain things that we think are necessary that really aren't, that we could cut out and we could take more time for self-care? Fear. These almost feel like chains or some kind of bondage, and this person's hands are straight along their sides. And if you look here, it almost looks like a fist, you know, like kind of like that. And there's like fear could be like a knot in your stomach. And like these people giving signals, and this individual is sending signals out. So when you are full of fear, that can also hold you in place, and that can like restrict you and almost like a straitjacket. That's kind of like the feeling I'm getting here. When all we want is to release the fear, everything is tight, everything is constricted, everything is held inside. Frustration. So you have this like whirling swirl here at the heart and the chest, and then this vibrant pink that's coming out from the head. Oh, I feel it. Like you just want to like clench your fists, right? And then just like you're just like radiating this, like, why is this not working? Why is this not happening on the timeline that I want it to? Right? So you don't even need a face here. You see this like white hot burning energy that's like coming from here. Like we're just letting that emotion from that previous card just bubble up and just like explode in this energy. And it's not even like, if there were a mouth here, that would kind of indicate that there's some like vocalization happening, but it's not. This is all internalized. The feeling of frustration first happens like, you know, it's hard to say. Do we feel emotions first with a thought in our head that rejects the reality that we're currently in, or does it happen in the emotional body? It's hard to say, but they are so like almost spontaneous, and it happens so quickly. So it's hard to say like which happens first, the frustration or the thought that this should be something else. Like whenever we reject the present moment, that thought can oftentimes be manifested in the body, and vice versa. Greed. This guy is so cute. He's this little like goblin character, and he's got his money, and he's got his I don't know, papers here that indicate, you know, worldly goods, and he's just hanging on so tight, and he's the king of his own world, but he's alone here on this box, right? So you say, my, when we're so greedy, we have to have things. And this is like the shadow side of the Four of Pentacles. This is when we cling, and I just did a video on tarot and oracle as related to the chakra system. To me, greed feels like a root chakra issue. So it's like you can see almost like the root chakra in his eyes with that blood red element. That's all he can see is lack, is deprivation, is desperation to make sure that the worldly material goods surround them to create this false sense of safety. And you can tell that if he takes one step left or right, he's going to fall. Grief. This person is just crying so much that they're drowning in the sadness, and grief goes beyond sadness. There is a sadness card in this deck, but grief is so much deeper and so much more profound than sadness, because it's like, this is intense. So it's, you know, hard for me to discuss some of this when, you know, my sister passed away from breast cancer. All of the emotions of the I should have done this, I would, you know, you beat yourself up, and you're missing that person so deeply, and there's nothing that you can do to change that. And it's just a process that you have to go through. And it's almost like you have to let that feeling kind of consume you at the beginning, so that if you push grief away and you don't let those tears out and you don't let the feelings come, it's going to come back in some form or another. So this is a really, really important shadow, I feel, that I'm glad was included in this deck. Identity. So you can see that obviously this is like a Medusa-like character with the snakes. There's a mask here again. So when we kind of look back at authenticity, you have this other mask. So as opposed to all of these words coming out from the heart, like now it's coming from the head. So, and not only do you have the energies of who you think you are coming out from the mind, it's also kind of coming down to bite you at the same time. There are certain elements of who you think you are that are good for you, and there are some that can harm you as well, because when we cling so hard to who we are, and the experiences that we've had, and what we think the world is like, our worldview, then we run into problems because we don't allow other information to come in and change that, to change who we are, to change what we think of the world. We cling so tightly because the ego says, this is true. If you let this go, I will perish. And we don't know what happens when the tower, like in tarot, when the tower card shows up, a tower moment in our life. That's the whole point, is to just blow things up, the structures that we've created around ourselves. Let it come down, let the foundation speak. When we take the higher ground and we think we're right all the time, oftentimes we're not, because we don't have all the information necessary to come to those hard, absolute conclusions. Inner child. So you see this glowing child inside this figure here, and all of the energy that's coming off of this individual, and almost like a cradling that's happening here. How often do we spend time playing and just laughing and enjoying the company of others, and coming back to our own inner child? I have a couple of decks that kind of tap into inner child work. So when I feel like something in my life may be stemming from a trauma or some kind of issue that I never dealt with in childhood, those are the times when you want to bust those decks out and play a little bit and see what comes up. And our inner child still needs healing throughout our entire lives, because oftentimes we don't have this process of working through every single trauma perfectly and letting it go. Oftentimes life just happens and it gets so busy that we start to work through it and then we let it go and we forget about it, but it shows up in so many different ways. So it's important to spend time working on the inner child so that you can come back to that full state in a more refined way. Not careless, but always having the beginner's mind. And that's what inner child work to me feels like. Integration. And that's what we're doing with this deck, is we're integrating these energies. And you can't push things away. You have to integrate them, because we are light and shadow. There's no denying that. We only want to embrace the good parts of ourselves. We only want to see the successes, but it's in the failures that create our life experiences, is it not? So all of these elements, so you can almost see this like angel-like figure here. It may not be an angel, but it could just be like someone like bursting out. So you're integrating something within, something's coming in, and refiguring, reconstructing who you thought you were in the first place. Oh my goodness, intrusion. So yeah, we come back to that boundaries card, right? So which one happens first? So like if this were to come up in a spread, like intrusion and boundaries, it's like, wow, the intrusion of your personal space creates that feeling of like, I have to stop it right now. I can't handle any more of this energetic penetration of myself. Like, I need to just stop and just refocus that safety bubble kind of around me sometimes. Judgment. This almost like feels to me like it's a ring, you know, and we hold tightly to that ring, that like the ring of power, sort of like in the Lord of the Rings, and we think we know it all, right? So other people are trying to access that as well. So everybody has their own ring of power, and you know, we flaunt it in our elements of judgment, whether we vocalize it in our throat chakra or we just think about it. So constantly we're judging people because we want to feel like we have the right idea. We're on the right track in life. Letting go. This is such a powerful card as well. Once we let go, it's like we end up in the flow. We end up letting divine intervention kind of work its magic in our lives, and we're one with that sacred connection that permeates all of life. But if we hold tight to what we think and what we want, we don't let the magic work its own way within us. It's like we have to have things on this timeline, having things happen in this specific way. We try to control the details too much, and that's not what life is about. And you know, I think the ultimate lesson is that we don't have control. We like to think we do, but we don't. And once we can accept that, then we can really open up to just the beauty and majesty of life. Metamorphosis. You see this cocoon, almost like a seed, with this dark figure here in the fetal position, and just like working on oneself. The shadow is creating change deep within, and then someday we'll emerge from this cocoon changed as a new entity, like a butterfly, just coming from one thing to a completely different thing. And sometimes this change is difficult, and it just needs time to kind of marinate, and that's what I'm getting from this card. Opening, and this is the same image on the guidebook as well as the box. You see 2-3 more figures kind of layered inside of themselves, and you have this door and these open palms, and the palms are blue or green, and so it's kind of like almost like a mix of following the heart and using what the heart says to work in the the expression element that comes from the throat chakra. So the green would be the heart and the blue would be the throat chakra. So the door here is deep within us, and when we stop searching outwardly for answers, we allow the answers that already reside within us to come forward. Pain. So you have this like spinal column kind of twisted, and it's like at the very base of our spine, these nerve endings that are coming out, and you know, our thumbs and our hands are very sensitive, so we have this nerve connection. And what do we do again when we experience pain? Do we try and shut it down with medications, with a variety of different addictions or vices that we have? Or do we allow the pain to speak? Do we allow our third eye to open so that we can come to an understanding of where this pain originates, and so that we can heal it? Panic. My goodness, there's so much going on here, and it's a very confusing card, but it has that visceral reaction. And let me just pull out the fear card again, and I just saw some connection here. So they look similar, don't they, with the heart and the stomach kind of together. So this feels more constricted internally, but this feels like the outside world is causing the panic. But that may not always be the case. Is the belief that the force that is eliciting that response within the body, is it real, or is it something we tell ourselves that we need to be panicked over? Oftentimes we elicit these responses. It's like the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system response, the fight or flight response within the body. Oftentimes we hang on to these responses and we don't let them go. So they're continually creating those the release of neurotransmitters in the body. Like we just let those dopamine, normal outflow of these transmitters, they just drop. And then we're in this state of doom, impending doom, because we're replaying that fear over and over in our minds, which can work out to manifest as panic. So it's almost like which one comes first, In my mind, fear would be first, and the panic would be second. Rage. So we had that boundaries card, right? And this one, there's a lot of green happening here, and if you can see the legs, everything is wide open, and it's just like from every orifice something is happening, and the anger, it's even beyond anger, but deep down, I think this says hear me. Deep down, we're not feeling understood. We're misrepresented. And then that rage comes in because we feel things, we feel falsely accused, or we feel life is unfair, and we're just railing against that. But again, anger is a necessary human emotion because it stirs us into action. So when we can feel anger and not let it turn into rage, that can be a productive emotion to experience because it's signaling to us that something is not quite right. But rage is like the unbridled, uncontrolled, just crazy, release of that built up anger. It's like when we don't deal with it in its earlier stages as when it would show up as anger, and the trigger continues to happen and nothing changes, then it's like, well, F it, I'm just gonna unleash onto the world. And I think that this shadow is a really important one. Some of us are actually disconnected from these feelings of rage and anger, and we try to push them down and because they're unsavory, right? It's like, you have anger issues. Well, it's not just as simple as that. There's a reason. Why is it that anger in particular is so, it can turn into a dangerous emotion if left unchecked. But it's just like any other emotion, and if we stop fearing it and we start understanding it and integrating it and looking for the root causes, that's when true healing, true change can happen. Reflection. So if you were to look at yourself, this image obviously has no face, and it's kind of unclear. So are we reflecting ourselves onto other people? Where is the truth in this? Which one are we? Which layer are we reflecting? Are we reflecting the truth or what we think is true onto ourselves and other people? Resilience. And this was on the beautiful postcard that I received. So you have this heart, and obviously it's broken, and it's like, it almost looks like a stone or a rock or something that once was hard is now shattered, but it's not dead yet. And this here almost feels like a magnetic field, like you would see around the earth, or the magnetic field around the sun, and it actually acts as a protective barrier from external threats. So when we have that broken heart, we are still protected, and eventually those pieces will coalesce back into a working heart, that we can once again allow ourselves to be vulnerable and be loved once again. Resistance. This one, this little tiny head, and it's all the mouth, right? And it's like, I'm not thinking anymore, it's just my mouth. And it's like, no. And these hands just feel like a hard stop to me with the red. And again, there's a lot of elements here of boundaries. Like some of us create too hard a boundary to penetrate by other people, and some of us have no boundaries at all. It's like we just are so afraid to be alone, and so we have to work with where we're at with our sense of personal space. And it almost feels like inside there's this road landscape here with the birds and the clouds here. Sometimes we just have to go within, I think, to find out what is it that we're resisting. Is it due to fear? Is it due to once again, people invading our space? Or is it something legitimate that we just are feeling pressured into, that we really need to put a hard stop to? Rising. This looks like a phoenix here. It's such a beautiful card, from the flames. Rises something new. Out of the ashes comes life again. Sadness. So this was the sadness card. You had your grief card and you had your sadness card. Now in the grief card, as you remember, the eyes were closed, but the sadness card, here's the eye and it's open again. And you have the tears, but they're not drowning you. It's like, it's a spiral that we have to understand the emotions that it's causing within us. So, but there's hope. And I get that sense from the coloration here, that right now, what's closer to us in this image is the tears, but behind it all is a sun of illumination, and it's going to lead us to better things and deeper understanding once we let those feelings out. Oh, you know what? I just saw that inside the eye, it almost looks like those same birds from the what is it? Card before. Oh yeah, from the resistance card. So you can tell, like, the birds here and the birds here. So if we don't resist the sadness, then it can transform us. And that's, like, I love the symbolism that just like kind of repeats throughout the deck. I love, and it may take some time to really get into all of that, to really see where they are, and that I think would come with time. And when you lay them out in a spread, you'll see colors repeated, you'll see patterns repeated, and that just lends so much to that intuitive. Well, I mean, it's like our subconscious is speaking to us in this art, and I love that. So self-embrace, you have this image of this individual, and it either is like flowing hair or some kind of red energy that reminds me of the root chakra, and you can see the arms are draped around one of itself, and there's pieces of paper: dream, find, make, direction. So sometimes we just have to be kind to ourselves and make ourselves up anew and find new words to define us. And these feel like labels to me. And labels can be helpful in understanding ourselves and the world, but also they can limit us. So in the quest for truth and understanding, sometimes we just need to take a break, embrace where we are, and then move forward from there. Sensuality. So at first, to me, this card did not really speak of sensuality to me, because you have the mouth and you have the eye here. And let's take a look at the guidebook. So it's called, the art itself was called Juicy Body. I freely enjoy the pleasure of my body and my senses. I fully open to all layers of my sensual expression. So here it says juicy, flowing, fluid, swirling, spiraling, undulating, flesh and depths, fiery and moist, desire and fantasy, seeing inside, letting it all be seen and expressed, hypnotic, alluring, weird and taboo, delight and disgust, raw emotion, truth. So I feel like that kind of does, it doesn't say it directly, but I feel like this section here kind of does hint back at the expression of the artwork here. So perhaps I was wrong in saying that it doesn't really describe the symbolism within the card, but it's indirect, and I also feel that may be intentional as well, because it allows you to come up with your own understanding of what the artwork means to you. So it's not going to tell you, hey, there's a mouth here and it's expressing this. It's almost like that boxes you in to what these bubbles could mean, these cells, these entities, whatever it is. And so I really feel that that's a beautiful artistic way of talking about the artwork, but not, pigeonholing you into one meaning or another. So well done. So it's about our senses, our nerve endings. If we allow ourselves to enjoy our pleasure, reflects on how we partake in these efforts. Contemplations, how do I connect with myself through my senses? And I really feel like senses here is the key word. And the ritual here would be like to consume something indulgent, and this is like an eating meditation. Like notice how it feels in your mouth before swallowing. And I have gone to a silent meditation retreat before, and the whole point of it being silent is that you can focus on other things, like as you're walking, as you're eating. What is the action that we often take for granted? How does it feel? What, the sensual pleasure of biting into an apple, the sound, the anticipation of that fruit, the sweetness and the chewing aspect. It's just amazing thinking about where that apple came from. All those things we take for granted and we just eat. We're just eating to satisfy that hunger, but we're not taking pleasure and not understanding, the body and how subtle and how awesome it is in the acts that we take for granted every single day. So in this picture, you have the eyes, mouth, you can hear things happening in this, like bubbling. You can hear that element. You can hear the fire crackling. You can feel the sensation of water and tears coming out. And like, sometimes, we feel things so deeply, we just want to cry. And it's not always a bad thing. But we also, like, what's happening in our body. I mean, is this like a breast, or, what is leading down to the bottom here of this image? It's just really interesting to think of sensuality in such a flowing, moving, undulating way. Shame. Yeah, look at these spotlights. Look at this individual, like, holding this candle, and I feel like inside there's a person who's saying it's going to be okay. Don't blame yourself anymore. But the world is telling us that we were wrong and that we should be shameful. And we tuck away the truth inside that we've already, we're perfect just as we are. Yes, we make mistakes, but that's all part of the process of learning and growing. But sometimes we don't. It's uncomfortable, and we just beat ourselves up over all of these mistakes because we want, essentially, to be perfect, which is impossible. Soul care. Again, figure in the lotus position. I love that that's a recurring theme, a recurring symbol throughout these cards. Burning root chakra work here. Wow. And how it just like permeates the entire being, the core of who we are. If we don't take care of that, everything else falls away. Tenderness. Here's that person again in that fetal position, or just like a crouched position. But if that metamorphosis card and the tenderness card came through, like, again, the metamorphosis is oftentimes difficult. But look at these little flowers that are sprouting here. When we take time to embrace ourselves, like in that self-care card, or self-embrace card rather, And it's not just, tenderness isn't just shown to ourselves, but whenever we show tenderness in the world, new life and new growth happens. It's like we create that ripple effect with our actions. And when we show compassion and love and sincerity, trust, understanding to one another, like we make the world a better place. Truth. The eye and the heart are one. And here's a box here, which is interesting because truth, we want to see it as this concrete element, and it's not true. There's so many paradoxes in life that we only really can follow our heart, but we also have to allow other people to follow theirs. When we take that rigid approach to what we think absolute truth is, that this is the right way, the only way, or it's my way or the highway, like that's what causes division among people. So when we can open our eyes and see with love, then we can express that love, and that will be more prominent, more powerful than this rigid way of seeing truth. And here with this, like, it almost looks like a flower. Growth can happen when we allow the bigger heart to take over. Victory. Wow, this person is really feeling their power, huh? But look, there are people down here that are like trying to hold them back and keep them down. It's like, I see you, I see how much success you've had, but it threatens my feeling of self-worth. So no, I'm gonna try and hold you back in either subtle or overt ways. But this person's victory and self-expression and feeling of pride just is shining through. So even though people are trying to hold them back, I mean, look at how big those feet are. At any time, you have the choice to allow yourself to be rooted by these figures, or you can just lift your leg up because you're too strong and you can walk away. Here's a mouth, a voice. As you can see, the A and the H and the exclamation point. Is this figure, or is this mouth screaming? I mean, is it an effective way to express oneself, or is it just letting out a sigh? There's so much that could be drawn from this, and how we express ourselves is how we manifest in the world. So you think and you act and then you create, right? So this is just part of the process. Now you can see this like crone-like figure here inside this mouth, and it says, look at me, see me, love me, tell me I'm okay. Vulnerability. You have this closed fist here, and it's like being chained or held back by some force here, but it may not be held back, or it could be being pulled. It almost looks like a claw, like this person was cut down the middle and they're being stripped away, and what's being exposed is sometimes a challenge. So maybe there's a wisdom here, an element here of wisdom that isn't speaking while this mouth is speaking, but the wisdom inside is kind of being quiet. So this fist here, is it resisting vulnerability? Is it resisting change? Or are you gonna speak your truth with this mouth here and tell people how you're really feeling? Wisdom. This is our final card here, and it's a beautiful one to end on. So you have this figure being covered in this cave, and it almost feels like, I don't know, there's lines in the background, but the first thing that popped into my head are like the folds inside of a brain. So the brain is kind of there, and it's guiding us, but it's fading away, and the heart is the thing that we can rely on to delve into those parts of ourselves that really have the answer. So the wisdom deep within is not always what we think it is, but once we penetrate those layers of thought and of personality and identity, then we can get at what's true. And that may be different for all of us, but as we grow, we learn and we develop that wisdom over time, and then we can express that with future generations. We can write about it. We can share it in stories to our grandchildren. We can pass on the wisdom, and that wisdom will live forever. So I thought I would just draw a card real quick. I know we're going long on this video, but there's so much to say about these energies. So I thought we'd pull a card, and that will be the thing that maybe we can consider working on today. How does this energy manifest in our lives? What things, what details, what events and situations and people in our lives trigger this element within us? Just hold that thought in your head, close your eyes, take a breath. Oh my goodness. Yeah, boundaries. This is a strong one for me because I am not afraid to be alone. And I say that, because I love my alone time, and sometimes people just bother me. It could be friends, family, whatever it is. And it's just like, just leave me alone, and so I can kind of gather my thoughts. And I like I said in my main video, that I think about things so deeply, like I think way too much about stuff, and that's where I gather understanding, is when I'm allowed to just kind of like sit and pick through different elements of what I think is happening, and it's important to create those boundaries, but not be stuck by them and push people away because I defend those boundaries so strongly. So for me, that's what this means. It's like I'm creating these layers of like guarding myself, creating this wall between myself and others. When they do something that triggers me, I want to just no, just step back. That's it. So how does it affect you? Like, do you have healthy boundaries? Do you have unhealthy ones? In what situations that you can think of in your life do these boundaries get violated, or do you violate other people's boundaries, and why? It's important to kind of like think about these situations and pick up on these patterns of what it is. How do we react, and what are we trying to get out of these moments of building up that wall, like building that tower almost, and then having that tower moment shake the foundation and break everything away, so that we can get to the heart of the matter. And this is all throat chakra here. There's anger here, there's throat chakra, there's root chakra here with the red as well, I feel. So there's definitely some sense of security being involved here, personal safety, personal protection. I even see that there's like tears coming down from eyes that are non-existent. So we can't see, we can only feel in this card. So let's really take a quick look at the guidebook here. I protect my body, energy, time, and space. I am allowed to say no to anything and anyone at any time. And that is true, but how we express it is key. So thank you guys for joining me for this walkthrough, and just kind of like, it almost was a deep dive, wasn't it? Into the wisdom of the shadow. I love this deck. I loved it ever since I saw it. I love the keywords, I love the imagery, and I'm looking forward to working with it and seeing where it can take me and the healing that I can achieve through its use. So I thank you so much for joining me. All the information will be in the description box, and I want to thank Jessica and Jenny so much for allowing me to be a part of this very, very, very special project that I hope will lead many people toward their own healing in their own special way. So thank you guys. Bye. As always, thanks for watching, and if you found value in this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more tarot-related content like this. Ring that bell to be notified whenever I upload new stuff, and don't forget to listen closely to the whispers of the heathen within that already has the answer and knows the path that's right for you. Until next time, be brave, be bold, be you. Bye.